Has life been terribly unkind to you? I mean, has it seemed as though life has been unfair? Something has happened to you. Maybe it's a broken relationship, broken marriage, divorce. Maybe it's a loss of a job. Maybe it's an illness. Maybe it's the death of a loved one. And you get through that situation, as you're going through that situation, whatever it may be, it gets worse. Something else happens, and it just gets worse and worse. And now you're angry and you're bitter and you're giving up hope. You think God has some type of curse on your life. Have you ever been in that situation? Has it ever been terribly unkind to you? And I'm here to say we're going to learn in our lesson today through the first chapter of the book of Ruth that if you're a child of God, if you remain faithful, there is always hope. And we're going to find out the hope that God gives Ruth through her difficult time. Stay tuned. This lesson is going to be fantastic. We're going to hear what the Lord has to say about making it through the most difficult of times. Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. John W. Wilson III, bringing you the Sunday School lesson for this Sunday, December the 3rd, 2023. I want to thank you for joining me on today. We're going to have a fantastic lesson. Our lesson is titled The Faith of Ruth. It will come from the book of Ruth. The lesson outline is verses 6 of chapter 1, verses 6 through 18, and then we'll skip over to verse 22. But we'll also cover verses 1 through 5 to make sure we have the proper context, and I believe that's helpful in our passage there. Before we get started, I want to thank many of you who have recently subscribed to this channel. I want to welcome you and thank you for doing so. And then those who have been watching for a while, I want to invite you to continue to share and to like this channel with as many people as possible. So let's get right into our lesson. Let's look at our background, what's happening here. This setting is taking place through the time of the judges. The first judge appeared right after the death of Joshua. His name is spelled Othnniel, Othniel. The last judge to rule is going to be Samuel. We're familiar with him. After Samuel, we get the first king, which is Saul. That didn't work out. Then we get King David. So this setting is somewhere in between there, probably toward the early part of the reign of the judges. The judges were military leaders. They were military heroes. They were not kings. God would raise them up, such as Samson, to defeat a particular enemy. And that's what God used them for. It was a time of instability in Israel. It was a time of apostate people falling from their faith in God. It was also a time where everybody did what was right in their own eyes. So it was a terrible time. It wasn't a helpful time during this period of judges. The period of judges lasted for about 180 years. From 1200 BC to 1020 BC. That was the period, about 180 years. So that's what's happening here. So this book of Ruth, the setting that's being taken place is during the day of the judges, of instability. And to make things matter, we see in verse 1, it was a famine in the land, a famine in Bethlehem. A famine in the southern part of Israel, Judah. And this famine means that there was a drought. And because there was a drought, and this was an agricultural type of society, an era which we lived in. There wasn't any food. And we can see here that the famine was so bad that people had to go other places and live for a period of time until the famine was over, until the crops start coming back, until harvest time started coming. And this is what Naomi and her husband did. Her husband was called I'm having trouble pronouncing it, but it's Elimelech. It's pronounced Elimelech. Okay, please forgive me on that. His wife was Naomi. She is the person who's talked about most in this first chapter, but she is not really the star, the main character in this chapter. She leads it off, and then as we see toward the end of this chapter, we see Ruth emerging as the central character in the book that's named after her. So Naomi had two sons, Mahlon and Chilion, and so they leave Bethlehem. Okay, and the Bible talks about they were Ephraimites. They were the descendants of Ephraim. Ephraim was a son of Joseph. Joseph had two sons. Manasseh was the older son. Ephraim was the second son. There were two powerful tribes in the southern kingdom of Israel, really of Israel of all. And Ephraim received a blessing that was greater than Manasseh. He was going to be stronger than Manasseh, and Manasseh actually was going to serve under the Ephraimites. And that's what we have here. And so the Ephraimites were from Bethlehem. They were on the southern part of Israel. They lived primarily in Bethlehem. And so they leave Bethlehem because of the famine, and they go to Moab. Moab is southern Jordan as we would have it today. There's a history. Moab is a descendant of Lot. Israel and Moab, they do not get along. They have conflict. They oppress one another. In this particular time, it seems as though Israel is on top of Moab because they are leaving Bethlehem to go to southern Jordan to live there for a while until this famine is over. And this famine, we're going to find out that it lasts a very long time. It lasts at least 10 years. That's a very long time. 10 years before things start coming back around. Okay? All right. So as they move to Moab, Naomi's husband, he dies shortly thereafter. And then at the end of 10 years, Naomi has lost her two sons. So now, during those 10 years, the sons had picked up wives. The wives was Orpah and Ruth. And so now, at the end of 10 years, you have three widows. Naomi has lost her husband. Orpah has lost her husband. Ruth has lost her husband. Orpah and Ruth have no children. What that means, they have no one to take care of them. Naomi has lost her husband. She has no one to take care of him. There's no recorded evidence of her husband having a brother or somebody like that that could take care of her. So they're in a very difficult spot. Okay, so it says here, so that the woman was left without her two sons and her husband. So Naomi is in a difficult spot. She's an older woman, and she has no husband, she has no sons, and no one to take care of her. Now our passage is going to read and begin in verse 6, and let's see what it says. Then she arose, Naomi, with her two daughters-in-law, to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard that in the fields of Moab, that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. So 10 years after the fact that they have left, at least 10 years, she now, after everybody has died, she's in the field and she hears that things are better in Bethlehem. God has visited upon the people, meaning that he has blessed them with rain and rain has brought crops and there's going to be food there. And now, since she has no husband, no sons, she wants to go back home, and hopefully things will be better then. And so she has her daughters-in-law with her, and they began to return, leave Moab, and go back to Bethlehem, the house of bread. Okay? And so God has blessed them. So she set out from the place where she was with her two daughters-in-law, and they went on their way to return to the land of Judah. All right, they're making this track. They figured this is the best way. Now, the key thing that we need to know here is that initially, Orpah and Ruth go with Naomi, and as they're heading back, something changes. I think Naomi welcomed the company. I think over the 10 years, they had a bonded relationship. Naomi looked upon those two daughter-in-laws as actual daughters. They were close. We had a case of a great mother-in-law and a case of a great daughter-in-law, great sons, fantastic husband. The family had gelled together, but now the men are gone, and it's just the women that are left. And so we look at in verse 8, but Naomi said to her two daughters on the way back, daughters-in-law, go return each of you to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. Naomi begins to think that, okay, you have two Moabite women. Ruth and Orpah are Moabite women, descendants of Lot. They worship pagan gods. Their culture worships multiple gods, different from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. She knows that they are widows. Their best chance of survival is to stay in Moab, southern Jordan, and try to remarry. Her best option, she knows that she's of age, and we'll find out that she'll say that. She doesn't have that opportunity. Her best bet is to go back to Bethlehem, and maybe the community there can help support her. She cannot promise them that they will do the same for them. They're foreigners. She doesn't know exactly what's going to be the condition back in Bethlehem. She knows that it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be, and she knows that she goes back to her mother's house, a place of refuge, a place where they can probably remarry again, then they'll be better off. And so she's looking out for the well-being of them. Even though she loves them, she cares for them, she wants them with them, she knows they're better off staying where they are in Moab and not going back to Bethlehem, where it's uncertain of how their life will end. There's nobody there that can take care of them. There's no father there. There's no brothers there. There's nothing there that can take care of them. So let's look what else it says. But Naomi said to her two daughters, go return each of you to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you. May the Lord be good to you. May he bless you in the same way that you blessed me. Okay? And as you have dealt with the dead, you dealt well, you brought me comfort through the death of my sons. You've been there for me. Through these 10 years, you have been fantastic to me. Since the death of my husband, you blessed me. Since the death of my sons, your husband, you have been there for me. She is acknowledging how great they've been to her and how valuable, but she's looking out she believes, for the best interest of them by having them stay. And then verse 9 says, the Lord grant that you may find rest. What's rest mean? What's Ruth and Orpah really looking for? What is Naomi looking for? They're looking for peace, they're looking for security, and they're looking for happiness. And so she's wishing the best for them. She wants them to have some type of security. There's no security in Bethlehem. She can promise them nothing. She can't even promise that she'll be taken care of. She can't even promise that she won't live in abject poverty. But she knows that they stay in Moab, where her people are, where her mother is, maybe where her father is, where their family is. they will be better off, and maybe an arrangement can be made where they can be remarried again because they're young of age. They're probably in their 20s. Naomi is probably in her 40s, maybe approaching 50. Okay, maybe even past childbearing age, as it would point to later on. So may the Lord grant that you find rest. Okay. It says each of you in the house of her husband. She's wanting them to go back and stay so they can find husbands and be secure and won't be subject to any type of abject poverty. You got to remember, in those days, if there wasn't, the male was the breadwinner, the male was the wealthy one. He's the one was the provider. And if it wasn't a male in the household, it was very difficult for women to make it. They either had to beg or they had to go to prostitution. But she said, if you go back to Moab, maybe you can find a husband. Maybe you can find that security, peace, and happiness that you all want, that you're looking for. Then she kissed them. She kissed them goodbye. And they lifted up their voices and wept. The kissing goodbye is, she's trying to end the relationship. She's trying to practice this tough love and make them go. And so the kiss is like hey, you gotta go. This is it. That's his final word. Outspoken. You gotta go. So she said then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and they wept. They cried and they cried like a baby. They were close. They were tight. I love what I see. I like the love again that these women had. I love the family that they once had together, how close they were. It must have been heart-wrenching to lose your husband and then to lose two sons. And then now you got to break up with your two daughters-in-laws who've been like daughters to you through your time of death of your husband. They were there through the death of your sons and death of your husbands. You guys ministered to one another, and now they're just tearing up and crying like a baby because she's trying to force them to leave. And they said to her, no, we will return with you to your people. No, they wanted to stay with her. They loved her. They cared for her. She had made an impact on their lives. Either through her faith or through her nurturing, her wisdom, or whatever it was. They had a great relationship. And it says here, but, it's a conjunction. Naomi's going to counter them wanting to go with her. But Naomi said, turn back my daughter. Now she calls them daughters affectionately, okay? Turn back my daughters. Why will you go with me? She said, you have no reason to go with me. Have I yet sons in my womb that they may become your husbands? She says, I'm not pregnant. I'm not going to get pregnant. The idea was that she would, if she was young enough, she would get pregnant. She don't even have a husband to even get pregnant, but they would grow up, and then those two sons would marry them and take care of them. But she says this. She says this. Have I yet sons in my womb that may become your husband? No. The answer is no. Turn back, my daughters. Go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. I don't have any children in my womb, I am too old to get married. I am a hopeless case. If you're waiting on me to try to provide for y'all to make it, but I can't help you. I can't help myself. I'm too old to get married. I can't get a man. I don't have any children. I'm not pregnant. I have no hope. I have no hope. I am not somebody you should bank your future with, because I don't even know what my future is going to look like. If I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband this night, if I were to have a husband this night and I would bear sons right now, would you therefore wait until they're grown 20 years later? Then you would be too old. Then you would be in the same situation I am in. Okay? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? Are you going to refrain from marrying, waiting for these kids to grow up, these two boys, if I did have boys? No, my daughter. She's trying to say, please listen to me. For it is exceeding bitter for me, for your sake, that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. The Lord, it seemed like he has cursed me for some reason or been cruel to me. I don't want that on you. I want something better for you. Verse 14. Then they lifted up their voices and wept again. They cried and cried some more. And then Oprah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. So Oprah's going to kiss her goodbye. Oprah, I don't think she did anything wrong. She just looked at the situation. She listened to the convincing arguments that Naomi was making. And guess what? She said, you're right. It makes sense. And so she kissed her goodbye, and she heads back to Moab. But the Bible says that Ruth clung to her. Ruth said, no, I'm going to stay with you. I'm going to stay with you no matter what. And so Naomi tries one more time to get Ruth to go back. And she said, see, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Go back to your family. Go back to your culture. And go back to what you're comfortable with. Return after your sister-in-law. She's trying her best. She loves them. But she thinks what's best for them, or Ruth right now, is to go back and do what Oprah did. But Ruth said this. Ruth is determined, strong. Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go. And where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. It's amazing. This is what Ruth does that's so amazing. Now she's turning her culture away. Something must have happened in this with Naomi and this family that she is choosing Naomi over her own mother. She is choosing having a family with Naomi than her own family. Something that about the faith in God that she had seen in Naomi's family, her husband, her two sons, is going to make her forsake all of what she knows, her people and her God, and become part of Naomi's faith in her God. Look what she says. She says, your people shall be my people. I'm going to renounce my people, okay? And she says, I'm going to live where you live. I'm going to go where you live, and your God will be my God. Now she's converting over. She's repenting. She sees that Naomi's God is superior or better than her own pagan God. Maybe she didn't have a relationship with her pagan God anyway. And maybe she got to know the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob better during these 10 years or so she spent with Naomi. But whatever it is, it's a change of mind, a change of course, a change of faith. My faith is no longer in that God, now is in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And she's taking an oath. She says, where you die, I will die. There I will be buried. She's making a complete change. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts you from me. She says, Naomi, I'm making a complete commitment to you. Complete. I want to be with you. I'm going to trust your God. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know how it's going to work out, but she's trusting Naomi's God that something will happen. She said, no matter what happens, I'm going to be with you, Naomi. That's amazing. That's amazing. Something, I believe, is a prompting of the Holy Spirit working in her heart, that she makes these bold statements, that she makes this commitment, that she makes this oath all the way. It's easy to say, your people are going to be my people. That's easy. It's easier to say, I'm going to live where you live. It's easy to say, I'm going to be buried where you bury. I'm going to die where you die. It's easy to say all things, but another thing is to say that your God will be my God. That's the more difficult thing. That's the ultimate. And I believe that's the ultimate that allows Naomi to give up and not to say anything else and say, this person is real and this is what she wants. Who am I to stop her? Okay? Look what it says in 18. And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more. She's determined. Holy Spirit is moving in the heart of Ruth for her to go with Naomi Ruth doesn't know what her future is going to look like. She doesn't know what God has in plan for her. Naomi doesn't know it. Naomi does. All she said, it looks like it's going to look terrible. Naomi's actually bitter. Ruth is not bitter, but Naomi is bitter. And the good thing about it is that God has plans for Naomi and Ruth in particular. She's going to bless Naomi through Ruth. And it's just amazing. We were to look at verses 19 and 21 through 21. They make it to Bethlehem, and the whole town is stirred up and excited to see them. Is this Naomi? She said to them. She said, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. She is still hurt, grieving, angered, troubled with God. For God had taken her husband, taking her 2 sons, leaving her without a provider, putting her in this situation. She's angry. She said, I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. She's right, to a certain extent. But God's not done with her. And when we go through our situations, we have to understand that God's not done with us. No matter what you're going through, no matter what you've lost, no matter how difficult your road or your journey has been, if you're a child of God, God is not through with you. Yes, you may be angry, but God is not through with you. Okay? And so it says, do not call me Naomi. She doesn't want to be called that. I went away full. Now I'm empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has testified against me and the Almighty has brought calamity upon? She's had a hard life. Gone through a famine. All those type of things. Just a difficult life. And I want to look at 22. Look what God does. So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her. This Ruth is a Moabite. She's brave. Moabites, the Jews don't like them. People of Israel don't like them. They're people conflict, and yet she's willing to forsake all of that, all her family, her God, all that, and go live in a foreign land. Naomi and her husband and her 2 sons, they were sojourners in Moab, resident aliens. And now you have Ruth. She's going to be a sojourner in a foreign land, and she's going to be a resident alien living in a foreign land. Amazing, strong woman. Okay, and with her, who returned from the country of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. What's so significant at the beginning of the barley harvest? God brought them just back in time for harvest time. That's a glimmer of hope. That means that things are going to get better. Things are going to turn around. The famine is gone. It's over. Now they'll be able to eat. They'll at least be able to glean from the fields when people harvest them. That means things are looking up. And so this ought to give Naomi and Ruth a sense of hope that God is doing something in their lives. They left when it was out of famine, had this calamity going on in their life, and they come back during harvest time. God is sending them a message that things are going to get better. He is ordering their steps, and He has their back. He is protecting them, and He will provide for them. So what do we learn about this? I believe we learned that from Ruth that we never give up. No matter how bad the situation is, never give up. I like the fact that Naomi was looking out for the best interest, although she loved her 2 daughter-in-laws very well. She was looking at least she thought so, for the best interest of her daughters. I like that. I love the love that was being displayed. I like that our title of the lesson is The Faith of Ruth. I like the faith that Ruth displayed. You know, your God will be my God. Your land will be my land. Your people will be my people. She's willing to forsake it all and allow the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to be her God. You know, just amazing amount of faith. And she was not promised anything. She wasn't promised. God didn't come and speak to her and say things are going to get better, or from your lineage, it's going to be King David. And out of King David, the Messiah will come. She didn't know any of that. She didn't know how she was going to eat her next meal. She didn't know how she was going to provide for her and Naomi. And yet she went anyway and made a commitment to God, and God honored that. Wow. I just think that's awesome. I love the love story. I love the closeness. I love the family unity. I would just love to have heard what was going on in that family. A lot of people say that maybe Naomi, she didn't display a lot of faith, maybe because she was bitter, maybe because she told Oprah and Naomi to go back to her people and her gods. But I want to say I think Naomi is faithful. I think during the time of stress, maybe that wasn't the best recommendation, or maybe it was. Maybe she thought she was doing what was best for them. But I believe Naomi displayed a lot of faith too, because she could have tried to stay in Moab, but she was going back too, hoping that the people would take care of her. All right, so I hope this lesson has benefited you in some type of way. I hope that when we find ourselves in difficult spots, that we can remain faithful, that we can pay attention to God's working in our lives as we go through what we go through. How when God sends glimmers of hope into our lives, we can recognize it and hold on to it and realize that God is working in our lives. He's not done. He's going to carry us not only into the situation, not only in the midst of it, but he's going to carry us out of that situation. And that God's going to take care of us. He's going to order our stuff. Is it going to be easy? No. Is it going to be difficult? Probably so. But the main thing is that if you look through this, you can see the hand of God working through them. As we were to read the rest of Ruth, you can see God working in that situation to accomplish his purposes. And that's in bringing the Messiah. Why did he choose Ruth? I don't know. But he did out of his sovereign grace and his good pleasure. Why did he allow the Naomi's husband to die and her two sons to die? I don't know. He allowed it, but he'll get the glory. Somehow it's working in his plan. I don't know why that happened. I don't know why calamity comes into our lives. I don't know why we experience death, broken relationships, loss of income. I don't know why, but God can take a bad situation and he can bring his glory into that situation. Well, I love you. Thank you for joining me. We'll talk again next Sunday. Have a good Sunday school. Have a good worship. Have a great Sunday school class. Love you much.